I pulled up to the curb outside the station just as Paul stepped through the doors, jacket slung over his arm. He paused when he saw me, then grinned. "My favorite chauffeur," he joked as he climbed in. "Where to?" I replied. He shut the door and pulled his phone out, turning it toward me as I eased back into traffic. "All right, Gab's team got this address from the trace." The map loaded slowly, then settled. "West Side," he said. "Commercial zoning mostly. Offices, storage, a couple light industrial spots. Some residential pockets mixed in." I glanced at the screen, committing the route to memory. "Could be anything then." "Exactly," Paul said. "Businesses, rentals, someone's old office space. Or a house that doesn't get visitors, I thought, but didn't say." We headed out of downtown, the buildings thinning and spreading apart as we moved west. Traffic eased. The city felt looser here, less watched. I caught him up on Ethan's map as I steered us through the turns. "Same dead ends," I said. "Same places where things stop making sense." "That's enough to get someone's attention," he said. "Whoever is behind this." I nodded in agreement. Whoever they are, they were watching him for a while. That takes planning. Doesn't feel random. "No," I said, "it doesn't." As we crossed deeper into the west side, buildings grew taller, more utilitarian. Parking garages and old businesses stacked concrete on concrete. Paul grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, this is Reddick. I'm requesting any available unit nearby this address to keep a tight patrol and stand by for assistance. Possible suspect contact." The acknowledgement came quickly. "Just in case," he added. "Good call," I said. We turned down a narrower street, flanked by aging office buildings and fenced lots. The address led us farther than I expected, into a stretch that felt barely used and forgotten. I slowed the car as we approached the destination. "Well," he said, brow furrowing, "that's not a house." The building sat back off to the side. Faded lettering was painted high on the brick. A radio call sign and a channel number, sun-bleached but still legible. Temporary fencing surrounded the property, sections bowed and patched like no one had bothered to finish the job. Windows were dark, some boarded, some intact. "This place still active?" Paul asked. "Doesn't look like it," I said. "Then why would anything trace here?" We parked a short distance away, both of us sitting still for a moment. This wasn't what either of us had pictured when we punched in the address. Paul exhaled slowly. "All right, that changes things a bit." I adjusted the brim of my hat as we stepped out. The sound of the car door closing echoed once. We stood there for a moment, studying the building, the fence, the other buildings. The lot had several, some 2 stories like the old radio station, and a parking garage off to the corner. At the far end of the lot looked what appeared to be a door that led down underground. Utility closet, perhaps. I rubbed my fingers over the bristles of my beard. Whatever had brought us here wasn't obvious. We checked our gear before we left the car, Paul clipping the radio to his belt and tossing his jacket onto the seat. I adjusted my belt too, where my short-barreled revolver was holstered, then rolled up the cuffs of my button-up shirt. We crossed through the gap in the construction fence, our shoes crunching on gravel, and old leaves that had collected where no one bothered to sweep anymore. Orange plastic fluttered weakly against a bent post, tapping in the breeze like it was trying to get our attention and failing. Paul eyed the front door as we approached. "Place looks like it's been waiting for a wellness check." I huffed a quiet chuckle. "Let's hope it answers better than most." The door wasn't locked. That stopped us both for half a beat. Paul looked at the handle, then at me. "That's either convenient or a problem. Only one way to find out," I said. I pushed the door open. The air inside was stale, but not rotten. Old dust, dry carpet, the faint musky smell you get from an aging building that hasn't seen use in a long time. Our footsteps echoed briefly down a hallway that opened up into what had once been the main floor. The first level looked exactly like what it was, a radio station that had shut its doors mid-life and never came back, cubicles with sun-faded dividers, a reception desk with a cracked laminate top. Someone had left a coffee mug on a filing cabinet beside a desk. A baseball cap hung on the corner of a chair like its owner had stepped away for a smoke and never returned. "Knock, knock," Paul muttered. "Looks like nobody's home." "Yeah," I said, abandoned in time. We moved room to room, old broadcast offices, a small break area with a dead fridge. Nothing disturbed, nothing spoke to being currently occupied. If someone had packed up, they'd done it a long time ago. Then we found the elevator. Paul pressed the call button instinctively. Nothing happened. The indicator above the door was dark. "Figures," he said. "Stairs it is." The stairwell smelled different, colder, concrete and dust. Our steps echoed tighter here, the sound snapping back quicker, more contained. The further up we went, the less the building felt like a workplace and more like a shell. The second floor doors opened onto something that didn't match the first. Most of the space was empty, not stripped violently, just cleared. No desks, no chairs, no personal clutter. The walls were bare except for faint rectangles where furnishings had once rested. Even the floor seemed unremarkable, just the same carpet as the bottom floor. Paul slowed. "Do you hear that?" "Yeah," I said. We followed the hum. It was faint, easy to miss at first, a low electrical presence, steady and patient. It led us toward the far end of the floor, where the main broadcast room had been. The original radio hardware was still there, mixing boards, racks of analog gear, dials yellowed with age. It had been cleaned, dusted, maintained. Cables ran where they should. Indicator lights blinked softly. Someone had brought it back online. And then there was the new stuff, industrial computer towers, rack-mounted units stacked cleanly along the wall. Thick cables fed into them, bundled and labeled, disappearing into conduits that hadn't existed in the station's original design. Small lights glowed faintly, no branding, just matte metal cases with cooling fans whispering steadily. This wasn't hobbyist gear. "That doesn't belong here," I said quietly. "No," Paul agreed, "and it's not cheap." I stepped closer, careful not to touch anything yet. The contrast was wrong. Old broadcast equipment kept alive, cables rerun to support something newer. Paul scanned the room, hand resting near his sidearm. "You still thinking kidnapping?" I hesitated. "I think," I said slowly, "someone's been involved a lot longer than we have." The hum continued, steady and unconcerned. Whatever this place was doing, it wasn't abandoned. A laptop sat at the edge of the table, near the humming tower like it had been forgotten. Not tucked away, not secured, just there, closed, thin layer of dust clinging to the lid. Not enough to suggest years, weeks maybe, a month at most. "That's odd," Paul said. "You don't just leave something like that." "No," I said. "You leave it if you expect to come back." I lifted the lid. The screen came alive instantly. No boot sequence, no login screen. Whatever had been running hadn't stopped when the laptop was closed. It had just waited. A dark interface blinked once and settled into place. Lines of text and overlaid graphics filling the display. Paul let out a quiet whistle. Still powered after sitting around this long. The power cable hung off the side of the thin device and ran off into the mass of cables at the floor, plugged in somewhere. The first window was simple, clean. No names, no identifiers. just timestamps and coordinate data noted down in neat columns. Longitude, latitude, altitude, movement vectors. This looks like GPS tracking, Paul said, leaning closer. Yeah, I replied, but anonymous, no personal data. No phone numbers, no carrier data, just dots on a map. I scrolled. One highlighted coordinate made my hand pause. Then another. Then another. Paul, I said quietly. He followed my finger, the old quarry, the mountain pass. Beneath them dozens of timestamps with coordinates. The entries were brief, minutes, seconds. Others lingered for hours. The system didn't care who they were, only where they'd been, how long they stayed, how close they got. This isn't about people, I said slowly. It's proximity. How close they were to something. I clicked into another directory. The interface changed. The screen dimmed, replaced by a grid. Faint, translucent lines dividing the area into large, square quadrants. The background was dark, grayed out, with pulses of light blooming at different quadrants. Small readouts updated in real time. Resonance variance, harmonic deviation, signal coherence, unstable. Paul frowned. What the hell does that mean? I don't know, I said honestly. But it's not all GPS data. There were waveforms, frequencies. Whatever this was listening to, we didn't have a clue. One quadrant pulsed brighter than the rest. The forest. The same region we'd been circling for years. Then Paul stiffened. Derek. Another point lit up. Closer. Much closer. I leaned in, reading the coordinate overlay. It was nearly on top of us, but its elevation was underground. My eyes dropped to the timestamp. 10 minutes ago. I felt my stomach tighten. That's when we entered the building, Paul said. Neither of us spoke for a moment. The equipment hummed around us, steady and patient. The building didn't creak. The air didn't shift. Nothing obvious had changed. And yet, Paul straightened, hand moving unconsciously toward his weapon. We listened. The hum was still there. But the room felt ominous. The laptop chimed softly. Another update. The underground quadrant pulsed brighter. Somewhere beneath our feet, something had just moved. Paul turned away from the laptop and scanned the room, eyes tracking the walls, the ceiling, the corners where old cables vanished into conduit. Do radio stations usually have sublevels? He asked. Basement storage? Maintenance tunnels, I added, for the utilities, especially with older infrastructures. I closed the laptop but didn't unplug it. Something about leaving it running felt necessary.